Good afternoon. Well, welcome to the first ever Tec-Masters Tec-Talk Podcast. I'm your host, Luke Dormany. Just a little background about Tec-Masters. For nearly 4 years, Tec-Masters has built a legacy of supporting our warfighters and advancing mission-critical technology. Today, as our AI division pushes into a new era of innovation, this podcast becomes a place to share the ideas driving that momentum. At Tec-Masters, this is where technology becomes imagination, and now where those stories are going to be told. Thank you for joining us today for the episode 1 of the Tec-Talk Podcast. Joining me today, I have a good friend and a great colleague, Rich Chenault. He is our Mentor-Protégé Director here at Tec-Masters. Would you like to introduce yourself, Rich?
Yeah, like Luke said, my name is Rich Chenault. I'm the Program Director for Tec-Masters Mentor-Protégé Program.
And how did you end up getting here to Tec-Masters? Tell us a little bit about your background. I know you were in the military prior to coming into the civilian sector. Could you talk a little bit more about that and kind of how you got plugged into the Mentor-Protégé program?
Sure. I spent 27 years in the U.S. Army. The bulk of that time I was as an H-64 A and D Apache standardization instructor pilot, stationed around the world in all the lovely locations: Afghanistan, Iraq, Kuwait, Korea, Germany, multiple places in the United States. I retired from the Army in 2010, and when I retired, I joined a company here in town called System Studies and Simulation, Inc., S3.
Yep.
And I managed all their contracts that were in the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia doing aviation training and maintenance.
Oh, wow. So you have quite an extensive background, as you just explained. So when you made that transition from the military, from the Army side, 26 years, you said 27 years? 27 years. Yeah. Thank you for your service, by the way.
Thank you.
We love that to have veterans working for us here at Tec-Masters. But when you made that transition from the Army into the private sector, what drew you to the programmatics, contractual side, and were you doing anything mentor-protégé related at S3?
No, I wasn't doing anything related to Mentor-Protégé at S3. I was a senior program manager, and initially when I got to S3, I was managing 4 of their contracts here in the United States. Ultimately, they ended up standing up a wholly owned subsidiary called S3 International when they kicked off their first contract that was outside the continental United States, specifically in the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia. And I moved over to S3 International to run that contract. Ultimately, it grew from 2 people deployed to the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia to almost 50. And I did that for the better part of 10 years over there.
Phenomenal. So you leave the Army, you move over to S3, work there for 10 years. And then I'm kind of going to gauge this. The topic today is, of course, going to be the Mentor-Protégé program here at Tec-Masters. But how do you make the correlation from what you were doing to S3? What made you gravitate towards a Mentor-Protégé program? Did S3 have a Mentor-Protégé program? And were you kind of involved in it at all? Or how did you hear about the Mentor-Protégé program first off?
S3 did have a Mentor-Protégé program. And the only involvement I had with their program was occasionally they would ask for managers' input on potential protégés and companies that we were familiar with that could be protégés for S3. And really, that's all the involvement I had with their Mentor-Protégé program. The transition here to Tec-Masters happened really because the contract I was working on came to an end, and it ended in December of 2019. So when that contract ended, I ended up leaving S3. I had a couple different offers for companies, and both those jobs were supposed to start in March of 2020. Right, when COVID was ongoing.
The great
exactly.
COVID-19 came on the picture. Wow.
So I was happy to take a couple months off work and wait for one of those 2 jobs. I was really just trying to decide which one I wanted to do. One of them was working really for Northrop Grumman, doing the exact same thing I was doing in Saudi Arabia. And the other one was working for Bell Helicopters, managing their H-1Z program. And both those jobs were supposed to start in March. Well, when COVID kicked off, both companies stopped hiring, and both those jobs went away. Not a big deal. I mean, nothing's going on in the world other than COVID. You're pretty much housebound a lot of the time there. But after a while, it was clearly obvious I wasn't ready to retire, and I wanted to do additional things. So at the beginning of June, I threw out a post on LinkedIn and basically said, hey, listen, I'm looking for work here in Huntsville if anybody's interested. And within 24 hours, I had 4 companies that wanted, to do interviews, and Tec-Masters was one of those companies. So I ended up doing interviews with 3 of the companies. One of them I ended up interviewing 3 different times. But when I got to Tec-Masters and I interviewed here with Tec-Masters, that's when I met Dr. Carroll. And honestly, the discussion with Dr. Carroll is what drove me to Tec-Masters, And that was, you could see that the Mentor-Protégé Program was definitely a passion of his, something he was very interested in continuing to do at a high level. But beyond that, he talks to you about having a company that's really a family atmosphere. Yeah. And truly, Tec-Masters is really a family atmosphere.
Well, very much so.
Honestly, the company that I came from, I'm not saying anything bad about S3, but it was completely different. It was a corporate atmosphere 100%, right? So that discussion with Dr. Carroll is really what drove me here. So initially I was hired to come here, and I was hired to support the Mentor-Protégé Program and also help doing business development in aviation just based on my background. When I got to the company, I was here maybe a month, and the lady that was running this program, a lady named Dana Cave, ultimately put in a resignation, and she took a job with another company here in town. And they needed somebody to manage the program. And I was here. I had program management experience. I didn't know anything about the program at all, but it's program management, right? That's what I figured anyhow. And they gave me the offer to take over the program, and I did, and I've been managing it for over 5 years now.
Well, that's a unique story. I know it's not. I know you're not the only one that has that kind of story here at Tec-Masters. You already kind of answered one of my questions with what brought you here to Tec-Masters. So I appreciate you for telling us about that. I want to pull the string a little bit more. I think it's super important that you said that Dr. Carroll was one of the driving factors in helping you make your decision to end up where were you going to end up. And I think that speaks a lot for us as a company. I 100% agree with you that we have a family environment. Yes, we are a corporation, but it's more family oriented, which is a huge deal. I think that the Mentor-Protégé Program, prior to you coming on board, could you tell us a little bit about that? How I know that the Mentor-Protégé Program was a thing. It's been a passion of Dr. Carroll's for a while. Could you kind of explain with your knowledge? I know you've been here for 5 years, but what is your knowledge of how it where was it and where is it now and where is it going?
So Tec-Masters has been a DoD approved mentor since 2003. So for over 20 years, they've been a DoD mentor. And the gentleman that had the program before me did very well. I mean, he got 6 Nunn-Perry Awards for this company, but ultimately him and everyone associated with the Mentor-Protégé Program ended up moving on in a very short period of time. So I came in and kind of picked up where they left off. Had to do a little bit of rebuilding with customer relationships and managing the contracts that we had existing at the time, and finding new protégés and proposing new protégés. But it was already an established program, is the bottom line. And it had a history of excellence. It just had, lost every bit of the leadership associated with it that was managing the program for literally probably a decade before I got here, all at one time. They just all ended up moving on to different locations. So
I want to I guess this will probably be a good spot to maybe allow you to explain the Mentor-Protégé Program for the viewers that don't know what that is. I know some companies have them, some don't. Could you kind of explain to our viewers what the Mentor-Protégé Program is? I know there's some for the DoD and for other organizations within the U.S. government. Could you kind of give us a background of what that looks like?
Yeah. There's, a lot of different agencies have Mentor-Protégé programs. NASA's got one, SBA's got one. And that's just 2 examples outside of the DoD ones. And they're all different. When you look at NASA does credit agreements, and they have their large primes who ultimately pay for all the proposed development of the protégés out of their own budget. And then they get small business participation credit for the amount of money they spend. It's typically, anywhere from $1 to $4 that they spend, they get small business participation credit for. When you look at like the SBA All Small one, that one's really designed as a mentor-protégé program where a large company and a small company develop a joint venture, and it's designed for that joint venture to be able to use the socioeconomic status of that small company, yet the past performance of the large, to pursue opportunities for growth. When you look at the DoD Mentor-Protégé Program, it is different from both those programs. It really is about developing the small business defense industrial base, strengthening it so that just large primes aren't the only companies that are going to be competitive out there. And another piece associated with it, beyond developing that small business defense industrial base, is the fact that the small business has to have a piece of technology. So they're looking for innovation in small companies, and they're looking at developing small companies to make them more mature, have better processes and procedures so they can survive long term.
Gotcha. So that's a great explanation. I really appreciate it. I think you just kind of also touched on the eligibility for companies that are looking to be protégés, right? They have to have unique, innovative technology, hardware or software. Is there any specific realm that a majority of the companies that we're looking at or have been protégés or mentors for, what kind of technology or what were we looking for when we were saying, hey, I'm guessing we have many applicants to be protégés of ours. So how does that process look for us?
We do. We have an overwhelming amount of interest in being protégés of Tec-Masters currently. We probably have 10 to 15 companies that are really solid companies that we could propose, but just simply, you can only do so many at a time is the bottom line. And DoD is only going to do so many at a time. But when we start looking at small businesses, we will look at a few different things. One is, what is that technology? Because the technology has to align with a DoD agency priority. So if we're looking at say MDA, for example, now when MDA does their broad agency announcement for the Mentor-Protégé Program, they list 8 or 10 priorities that they're looking for technology that has to apply to MDA. And all the agencies do that same thing. So when we're looking at small companies and their technologies, we have to make sure that we see a good connection with those DoD priorities. Because if there's not a good connection with those DoD priorities, ultimately we would, write a proposal, submit that proposal, and it probably not be accepted. And we have had 100% success on proposing small businesses as protégés and making it through that process and getting them on contract. But a piece of that is because we really do emphasize that technology piece. The other thing we look at, and this is a big deal, is how do they fit culturally with us? I mean, you understand the culture here at Tec-Masters. It's a family environment. Dr. Care is very spiritual. If that company's culture doesn't align with ours and we can't communicate effectively, then it's not going to be a successful mentor-protégé agreement. So technology is a big piece of it, but also the cultural fit and how the small business communicates with us is another big piece that we look at as well.
For sure, yeah. That really kind of resonates with us as a company and the people that work here, making sure that the cultural atmosphere that we choose to be mentors for, that's a huge deal for us. I know we're talking mentor-protégé. Maybe this is a good time to kind of talk about a little bit in brief about the DoD priorities. Okay. What are you seeing are some of the DoD priorities for these small protégé companies or small companies that are wanting to be protégés? What are you seeing a majority of these companies focus their efforts on?
Software. Honestly, software and artificial intelligence. And, when you look at the critical technology areas associated with DoD right now, artificial intelligence is one of those. Yep. So today we have 3 protégés. And of those 3 protégés, we're working on artificial intelligence software tools for 2 of those 3. The third one is a tool. It's a piece of hardware. We have an electrical engineer embedded with our company working on their technology. But all of the other protégés that we're looking at, or potential protégés that we're looking at, have some sort of AI tool that they want to advance and get in front of DoD.
Gotcha. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Making sure that they're in parallel with what the government's doing. It makes sense. I know you've mentioned that this program has been very successful over the years. I'm guessing for the last 15 years at least, right, or longer. I know that just through our conversations we've had, in passing, or me coming to your office and just talking about everything Mentor-Protégé, I thought it was unique when I first learned about the Mentor-Protégé program. I didn't know anything about it until I came to Tec-Masters, and I saw how big of a deal it is to Dr. Carroll. I thought it was unique that we have been a mentor to several companies that actually have gone on and have become larger than Tec-Masters.
Yeah.
Could you talk a little bit about that? I don't know a lot of those details, but I do know that has existed in the past. Could you maybe mention the companies or just talk about how we have helped companies succeed far more than what the expectation is? I guess if that's a way to say it.
So when I took over the program, we had 4 existing protégés. And, when you looked at the 4 different contracts, 2 of them were MDA contracts, one was an Air Force contract, and one was U.S. Army. One of those MDA protégés is a company called BMA. And BMA, when they started the Mentor-Protégé agreement with us, they had 75 full-time employees, and their annual gross revenue was somewhere in the $10 to $11 million range. When they finished the Mentor-Protégé agreement after 3 years, they had grown to 257 full-time employees, and their revenue was bouncing around $30 million a year. So they grew drastically. And not surprisingly, BMA ended up being one of our Nunn-Perry Award recipients. They were our FY21 recipient. And
I remember BMA. That's with George Beshnik.
Yep.
Is the CEO, correct?
It is.
Yeah. So it's interesting. We I know you were involved. We had some good conversations. So maybe what is the relationship like? I guess once a company, a protege, is the term outgrow, or how long can they be a protege for, or how does this process look like? Okay, you have 3 years or 4 years in the program. What does that look like when a company nears the end? And then usually, maybe kind of explain what the relationship. How do we here at Tec-Masters try to leverage our relationship as a mentor protege even after the program after they're out of the program?
So when you propose for a mentor-protege agreement, the standard agreement is a 3-year agreement. However, companies or small businesses are allowed to be protégés for up to 5 years, is what the DFARS allows. So if you do a 3-year agreement, you could literally propose a second follow-on agreement for 2 years. You can also ask for extensions. Like one of our current protégés is on an extension, Ingenix, as a matter of fact. We started an extension year with them in August. But one of the companies that was a protégé when I first got here is Gene Capture. And Gene Capture, during the 3rd year of their Mentor-Protégé agreement, we proposed a follow-on year for another option year, and we were successful getting that. And then during that year, we proposed the 5th year, and we got the 5th year for them. So it depends on the company, their technology, and how much we can still do to support that protégé, as whether or not you really have the opportunity to propose for extensions. But after those agreements are done, we don't just cut off a relationship with anybody. We don't. If you talk to Reggie Spivey, our COO, Reggie will tell you we're building a small business ecosystem. And that small business ecosystem that he wants to build is a group of small companies that have different socioeconomic status than Tec-Masters has different past performance than Tec-Masters, and gives us the opportunity to leverage their socioeconomic status and their past performance when we chase other opportunities. And we did that earlier this year with one of our previous protégés, Riverstone Solutions. We had a recompete for our constructive Sims contract in Lawton, Oklahoma, and we needed her on board. And we ended up bringing Angela Rittenbach, being the owner of Riverstone Solutions. We brought Angela's company on board. We proposed for that recompete. We won it, and now Angela's a subcontractor to us out there.
That's awesome. I love hearing the success. The relationships is very important, like you said, to Dr. Carroll. So I'm sure that the Mentor-Protégé program, you leading that effort up, relationships are also very valuable to you, because you never know when you might need someone on your team, and who better to go to than a past protégé or a current protégé, right? Mm-hmm. I kind of want to. We know that we have this prestigious Mentor-Protégé program. What makes Tec-Masters such a good mentor? Like, look long term over the last 10, 15 years, what has made us so successful? Is it Dr. Carroll has just enabled everyone that's leading it, and you guys just run with it? Or what is the foundation of why do why do we have such a successful one? Because I think our next topic soon will be the Nunn-Perry, and I know that we have quite a few Nunn-Perrys.
We do.
And I'm just trying to understand, and I think the viewers would like to understand, is why Tec-Masters?
Well, there's a few things I think that set us apart. And when I talk to small companies that want to be our proteges, I tell them all the same thing. Go talk to as many mentors as you possibly can. Find the one that fits your company best, the culture that aligns with you. And I think several things that we do that really help us is we choose good small businesses to be our proteges. And without having a good small business to be our proteges, it's difficult to be successful at it. It really is, because you have milestones you have to meet every year. You get a risk rating every year. So part of it is our selection process of who we want to be proteges. Another piece of it is the fact that when we bring proteges on board, it's not like we just get them on contract and we give them subject matter expertise support and they never see anybody else in Tec-Masters again. With us being a small business, they have access to all of our executives, and it's very common that our execs meet with our small businesses. As a matter of fact, we have recurring meetings with two of our current proteges right now, where Reggie sits in and supports the business development of those two companies. They also have access to Dr. Carroll and to Rod. So I mean, they do get the ability to interact with our executives. But I also think one big piece that makes this program successful for Tec-Masters is the fact that Tec-Masters makes this as a dedicated effort. And what I mean by that is, this is my full-time job. This is what I do. This is what I do all day long, is to support small business, right? So those small business proteges that we have access to me and to Phil Maville, the other program managers associated with Mentor-Protégé all the time. And we're constantly interacting with our proteges, and we're constantly communicating with them. And we do routine, once a quarter we sit down with them and try to figure out, are we on path? Is this still what you need? What can we do, beyond the scope of the statement of work, to help mature their company and to grow their business? So we're always looking at their needs, and we're always trying to meet those needs. When you look at some Mentor-Protégé programs, the program managers that run them aren't necessarily full-time positions.
Okay.
It's an additional duty. It may be in a large company, or even a company that I was with previously. I don't think that was his full-time job, the gentleman that was running it. I think it was just part of what he did. So I think having someone that's dedicated to just the program itself and spending, their entire work time, working on helping those proteges is a big deal.
So I know that you said the DoD only allows for a certain amount of proteges at a given time, right? Or I guess my question, my long-term question would be, could you talk maybe about the team that surrounds you, who you have supporting the Mentor-Protégé program? Because I not only do we have a full-time employee, you being the director, you also have a team around you. So it shows a lot of dedication from the Tec-Masters team, the expertise that we bring. Could you talk a little bit about how that is oriented in the company?
Sure. So when you look at the Mentor-Protégé program for us, I'm the program director. Phil Maville is the senior program manager. Phil's managing two of our current proteges. And then every one of our proteges has at least one employee that's dedicated to that protege to help advance their technology. Whether that employee is a data scientist, a software engineer, electrical engineer, those are the guys we have today. But we've also had, with like gene capture, they had a medical technology. So we had, a chemical engineer, a research scientist, a microbiologist, just a variety of different specialties that support this Mentor-Protégé program. So internal Tec-Masters employees, we have somebody supporting those proteges literally 40 hours a week, kind of a thing. And Phil and I are managing those. And then externally, we use the Women's Business Center of the Catalyst. And we have a great working relationship with Lisa Mays and Victoria Tripiano at the Catalyst. And they have a wealth of subject matter experts that if we don't have the ability to use an internal SME to support one of our proteges, then we'll put the Catalyst, the Women's Business Center of the Catalyst, on a task order and they will hire a subject matter expert to come in and actually support those proteges. And I think that's a critical piece of it. What I mean by critical piece is we don't use interns to support our proteges. We're looking for subject matter experts to support our proteges, so then they get actual, something that's worthwhile out of that, expertise.
Yeah, that sounds like a great relationship there with the Women's Catalyst. Is that what
Women's Business Center of Catalyst?
Okay, yeah, that's awesome. I think we've talked about that before. Before we move on to the Nunn-Perry, I know that the Tec-Masters AI division is a new division that's been set up recently here at Tec-Masters, and I think as of May of this year. And how is the internal AI division here with Josh Lipsmeyer and Peyton Fite? What kind of unique capabilities or insight are you guys able to leverage from the Mentor-Protégé Program with our internal AI guys? Are they bringing anything, a different viewpoint, or are they bringing tools and capabilities to your proteges? Could you maybe explain that relationship?
Sure. So the addition of us having an AI division here at Tec-Masters has really been a great thing for the Mentor-Protégé Program because, like I said, when you look at the DoD's critical technology areas, artificial intelligence is one of those. I think it's 6 or 7 areas.
Yeah.
But the bottom line is, almost all of our proteges, even the one that's has an electrical engineer embedded with them now, they have some needs for AI. And what it does for us is it gives us the ability to use our own internal assets, and we're not having to go to the catalyst, to find somebody who's got experience with AI. We brought on 2 guys, like you said, like May of this year, that have a tremendous amount of AI experience. So they actually meet. Peyton's been meeting with 2 of our current proteges, and it's a recurring meeting, and they're looking for opportunities to use AI. They bounce ideas off of Peyton, and Peyton, gives his opinion on what they could do with their ideas and whether or not there's an ability to maybe develop a prototype for a customer. So he's been supporting us in that regard for a while now. But recently, the company also invested in some servers.
Yeah.
And Peyton has offered up the ability for our own software developers and our own data scientists to use those servers to build those tools on and have, a segmented piece of those servers, dedicated to a specific protege. And lastly, our software developers also interact with those guys, like Alex Norris, who is our data scientist that's supporting both the Lockwood Group and Nginx. He's been working on AI tools for both those proteges for a while. He has that backup resource to be able to come back to the Josh and Peyton and ask questions. Hey, what would you do here? How could we do this? How could we make this better? How and get their insight that he just simply wouldn't have.
That you bring up a great point, because I've seen it many times, and I think it goes to the point that you've been talking about, just having the internal staff deeply embedded with the Mentor-Protégé Program in parallel with everything you guys are doing. We're also kind of just walking with you guys the whole way, trying to support you guys however we can. I think I would like to talk maybe a little bit now. We've mentioned the Nunn-Perry Award several times. Could you maybe give us a little bit of the history behind the Nunn-Perry? Why is it important? And then talk about Tec-Masters' success with the many Nunn-Perrys that we have.
Sure. The Nunn-Perry Award is an award that's done at the DoD level. It comes out there's a call for nomination that comes out on an annual basis from the Office of Small Business Programs at DoD. And they're looking for mentor-protege teams that have excelled during that year. And when they do their call for nomination, they have a format that you have to respond to. It's kind of like writing a proposal. Honestly, there's 5 factors associated with their call for nomination. Each one of those factors has between 3 and 7 sub-factors, and they dictate how many pages you write, and what kind of content you're putting in there. But the bottom line is there's only a handful of companies on an annual basis that are selected for Nunn-Perrys, and they have to prove that they have had excellence in the program. And they do that by looking at reporting that we do on a semi-annual basis and an annual basis. So they look at our semi-annual reports, They look at our annual reviews, and we pull data out of them to quantify the information we put in that call for nomination. But the bottom line is, if you don't have at least 25% growth in, say, full-time employees, revenue, prime contracts, subcontracts, you're really not competitive for it whatsoever. But the nomination packet itself looks at not just growth, but they also look at how did we help advance their technology? What did we do as far as advancement of that? What have we done as far as helping them with quality management certification? So anything from like an ISO 9001, 2015 certification, maybe a 14001, CMMI, and we do a variety of different quality management certifications. And then they look at what kind of stuff did we do for individual employees? Did we do, did we send somebody for like PMP training, or did somebody get their CISP certification? Yeah. So they're looking at a variety of different things, and you have to be able to justify literally each area within those factors and those sub-factors, even down to the program management aspect of it. Did we turn our reports in on time? Were they accurate? What was our DCMA risk rating? And they evaluate each one of those factors. And then, like I said, on an annual basis, there's maybe 3 to 5 companies that are selected for Nunn-Perry's. Tec-Masters has been a DoD approved mentor since 2003. We've had a total of 17 completed mentor-protégé agreements. We have 3 current protégés, so a total of 20 protégés. But of those 17 completed agreements, we've had 9 Nunn-Perry Awards.
Oh, wow. That's remarkable.
And one of the current protégés is a nominee for last year, and I fully expect them to win because they had just outrageous statistics for their growth and everything we did for them. I'd be shocked if we don't win.
So number 10, number 10 is right around the corner.
I think so.
Hearing.
I really do.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Is there any? I know it's prestigious. So how does it look like when a company is awarded a Nunn-Perry? Is there like a big conference you guys go to, or is it they mail it to your house? What does that look like?
No, on an annual basis they do the annual Mentor-Protégé Program Summit, and it bounces around different cities within the United States. This year it was supposed to be in Alexandria, Virginia, but it was postponed due to the government shutdown. But they have that summit. It's typically about a 3-day event, and at that summit they do a Nunn-Perry luncheon. And there's 1,000, 1,500 people at the summit. 400 or 500 people will attend that luncheon, and it's a big deal. I mean, they do a big presentation for the companies that get up there and walk across stage, and receive those Nunn-Perry Awards. And when a company gets presented a Nunn-Perry Award, the mentor gets one, the protege gets one, and all their authorized subcontractors, like, again, we use the Women's Business Center, the Catalyst. All 3 of us walk across stage one time. We all receive our, Nunn-Perry Award. As a matter of fact, there's one sitting here.
Oh, wow.
By chance.
That was smart. Whoever did this, I guess Peyton might have prepped this. Yeah, this one is actually the Department of Defense 2016 Nunn-Perry Award, Mentors Tec-Masters, and this one, the protege was Certified Technical Experts Incorporated, HBCU, MI, Alabama State University. Wow.
Yep. So each of the companies and agencies that were associated with supporting that Mentor-Protégé agreement, they end up getting a Nunn-Perry Award. But it's a big deal. DoD takes it very seriously. Like I said, there's the years that we've won it. Since I've been here, we won FY 20, 21, and 22. We did not have an eligible protege in 23. For 24, we submitted Ingenix, but each year it's been either 2 or 3 people, or companies rather, that receive it. Yeah, so it's awesome. Not a ton of companies that end up winning Nunn-Perry's.
Yeah. Who do you happen to know who has the most?
It's probably somebody like Raytheon.
Raytheon, one of the large.
Yeah, one of the largest. I think Raytheon has got like 20 or something like that, but it's Raytheon.
Okay, and we're Tec-Masters. We're not too far behind, so
no, we've done well. I mean, over 50% success rate.
That's awesome. So I know that we've kind of talked about how the Mentor-Protégé, or how Tec-Masters has benefited the Mentor-Protégé, like how Tec-Masters is plugged in. Mm-hmm. What is beneficial from the Mentor-Protégé program? How does Tec-Masters benefit from it? Because there's always, it's a business at the end of the day. And could you do you understand my question?
I do. Yeah. I mean,
so Tec-Masters has fit into the Mentor-Protégé. How does the Mentor-Protégé make basically fit into the Tec-Masters' larger mission and success of the company overall?
So a piece of what Phil and I are responsible for doing is making sure that what we do within this program that aligns with the strategic goals of the company. And we do that in several ways. These Mentor-Protégé agreements are cost reimbursable agreements. There's no fee allowed on them, so we don't make any money per se on it. But it ends up paying for my salary, Phil's salary, and like when we have our internal company assets supporting our protege, we'll give them an IWA, an individual work authorization, and they'll log against the Mentor-Protégé program when they're supporting that protege. So it helps offset some of the cost associated with it. It's a good marketing tool for us. I mean, anything that we do, any kind of success stories we have with our proteges, we'll put them out there on LinkedIn, and on company website and stuff. So we use it as a marketing tool. But honestly, back up here, and we also fulfill Reggie's goal of having a small business ecosystem. Yeah. But bigger beyond that is Dr. Carroll's goal to give back to small companies. Yeah. He's got his own foundations from Dr. Carroll, but he also wants Tec-Masters to help give back. And he views our support of small businesses and helping build small businesses as a piece of his way of giving back. So, and like I said, when I first met him, I could tell this was a passion of his.
Oh yeah, I have lots of conversations with him, and he greatly appreciates what you've done to the Mentor-Protégé program. That is for sure, and is super excited about where it's headed, because I think it's even going to be better than it's ever been before in the next couple of years. So that's exciting. How long has the Mentor-Protégé program been around? I know you said for Tec-Masters it's been 2003. Has this been since the 80s, 90s, or when did it come on the scene?
So this program, the DoD Mentor-Protégé program, is the longest running funded program when you look at Mentor-Protégé programs. And this one came into existence in 1990.
Oh, wow.
It was a pilot program until December of 22. So it was working literally annually as a pilot program until the last few years. Now it's a permanent program. It's funded at a higher level, gives more small businesses the opportunity to become proteges. But it's been around for a while.
Wow, that is remarkable. Yeah. I had no idea it was around for that long. As you know, so we've talked about all the successes of it. As with anything, what challenges come with running this Mentor-Protégé program that a lot of people might not realize? All the companies always say, hey, it's a great program, but there's some challenges, and maybe just briefly touch on some of the challenging aspects of running a Mentor-Protégé program.
So honestly, one of the things that's hard to do is when small companies approach us, they want to be our proteges, and they're just not ready for it. Yeah. There's a sweet spot, I think, when you start looking at the size of a company. You have to have enough employees that there's some division of duties. If not, we will overwhelm an individual. Yeah. So it's tough telling small companies, hey, listen, you'll probably make a great protege one day, but it's not going to happen right now. Yeah. And that is something that is a bit of a challenge. And beyond that, it's really the reporting to me is one of the bigger challenges of this program. This program has got a lot of reporting based on the size of these contracts. We do monthly status reports, monthly financial reports. We do quarterly program management reviews. We do semi-annual reviews. We do annual reviews. So we're doing large reports routinely. And when you look at like our semi-annual reviews, it's probably a 20-page document, but realistically, every time we submit one of them, it's got 60 attachments with it that are supporting documents associated with it. So the reporting, considering how small these contracts are, is it's a bit of a challenge. And until you get used to the reporting cycle associated with these things, I know the first time I did a SAR here, I was like, okay, what's a SAR? I don't even know what a semi-annual report was. Didn't know what the format was. And it took a minute, to get one done and turned in. And I had 4 of those due at the same time. So that was honestly just getting used to the reporting of this program was a challenge for me personally. Now, when you look at it from the perspective of like a protege, it's how do they balance their time from all the things that we have proposed that we're going to do on an annual basis, because Phil and I have to keep these things on milestones. Mm-hmm. How do they manage their time so they can continue running their business, growing their business, while also receiving a ton of mentoring and training so that we can be successful in this program as well. So they have their own challenges, like I said.
Yeah, so it kind of aligns. Yeah, it's like they have a full time. They're running a company full time, but they also have to have time for the mentorship that you guys provide, that Tec-Masters provides to them.
They do.
So they have it's a full plate, and then for a couple years at a time.
It is, and that's why honestly you need, on the smallest side, I would say you need at least 10 people in a company, and truly, I prefer companies that are in the 20 to 50 range, because then there's enough division of duties that if we're going to do quality management, okay, this person's handling quality management, this person's handling finance and accounting, this one's doing human resources, this one's handling the technology that we're doing, and somebody else is doing the business development. Versus, we've had companies that are size, 3 people approach us before, and it just can't do it because they won't have the bandwidth to take on all the additional challenges of the Mentor-Protégé program while still trying to build their business, and make it survive.
Yeah, and I think that was going to be kind of my next question was what kind of separates a strong protege company, and that's one of those is the size of the company, having multiple people, not that multiple or employees cannot carry multiple roles, but having separated duties so one person's not overwhelmed. If you have 3 or 4 or 5 people working at a company, they're going to be overwhelmed quite quickly.
They are.
So maybe one trait is anywhere from the 20 to 50 range when it comes to employee size. Any other traits that benefit a protege?
I mentioned this earlier, communication skills. They've got to be able to communicate with us. If we're trying to get say an SME from the Catalyst to come in to support them, or somebody internally to support them, and they're not responding, for a week, a week's time, when you're looking at these are 1-year periods of performance, each, the base option year 1, option year 2, we have to have a specific set of milestones done in each one of those years. So we can't, waste a lot of time. So they have to have the ability to communicate. And like I said earlier, it's part of what we look at when we're doing, when we're looking at potential proteges, is how well do they communicate with us.
I got you. Yeah, communication is so key in the business environment.
It is.
It is. If you do not have a team that communicates, that team's going to be unsuccessful.
Yeah.
I have one question that I wanted to ask later on, but I guess I'll do it now. Is what kind of surprised you the most when you stepped into this role? I know that you were familiar with the Mentor-Protégé program. Like, you stepped in and you're like, wow, this is completely different, or is this exactly how I thought I envisioned it was going to look? Or what was your first reaction when you stepped in here? This is on more of a personal side note.
Well, honestly, it was the overwhelming amount of reporting, because I took this program over on literally the 3rd of September, and semi-annual reports and annual reports, the reporting period ends on 30 September for that year. And I had 4 sets of I had 4 proteges. So I had 4 semi-annual reports that were due, 4 annual reports that were due, and they're due 30 days after the end of the reporting period. And I had no clue what I had just signed up to take over. And it was an overwhelming amount of work to get those things submitted on time. And they weren't necessarily the greatest reports, ever, but
they got submitted.
They got submitted. They had some corrections to be made, but realistically, it was a challenge initially, and there wasn't anybody here from the previous program either, which made it tough because I didn't have anybody to bounce back, fall back on and say, all right, so what are we doing here? Yeah. Why are we reporting it like this? And what are they actually looking for? I had to rely heavily on my DCMA reps and just ask questions from DCMA, and to, it's one great thing about our DCMA reps, they're willing to answer questions and they're willing to help. So it really helped, reduce my stress load that first time that we had a heavy amount of reporting due. But beyond that, the program is a fun program because I get to watch these proteges just grow and flourish, and I get to see them mature their processes and procedures. We've done a ton of quality management and business development support and HR and finance and accounting, and it's always fun when they come back and they say, oh my God, this has been life-changing as far as the ability to get our finance and accounting system, compliant with DCA, SF 1408 standards, kind of thing. So that piece of it's fun, but, for me, I just didn't know what I was getting into initially. I figured it was just program management, which it truly is at this point, and I understand that. But at the time, I was a little concerned about all this reporting.
Oh, I bet you were. Sounds. I'm glad. I'm not jealous of you jumping in there September 3rd and having all these reports. I know that in the past, as we're getting close to getting to the end, as you have so many proteges, you say we're on number 20, or we have 3 right now, which is a total of 20. As business moves forward and over the 15 years, some we may keep really close hold, but I think there's an initiative. Maybe I'm wrong, but I feel like there's an initiative to kind of reignite the flame or the fire that was once there with our other our proteges in the past.
Right.
Can you talk a little bit about what we're trying to do there in saying, hey, we had such a great partnership maybe 10 years ago,
Sure. 15
years ago. The team is still here. Tec-Masters is moving in a great direction. Most of our proteges are. How are we re-engaging if we need to re-engage? Some we have communication with, but the ones that we haven't engaged with in a while, is it a coordinated effort? Which I think it is a coordinated effort, because I've talked to you and I've had conversations. Can you kind of tell the viewers what we're trying to do to re-engage some of those proteges?
Sure. So, like I said, when I first got here, we had 4 proteges, and we've had 3, that we've brought on board since then. But all those proteges prior to that, I didn't know any of them. And I mean, I didn't know any of them. And they're not all here in Huntsville. As a matter of fact, they're scattered out, in quite a few different locations around the United States. So me getting here and not even having a point of contact within, you mentioned this company here, Certified Technical Experts, I've never met anybody from that company, kind of thing. But so we kind of lost contact with some of them. We did. And part of that was the transition between, the gentleman that ran it before I got here and me, and just not knowing any of these previous proteges. But in the last few years, Dr. Carroll brought on Rod Heron, and Rod is Dr. Carroll's principal advisor. And one of the things that Rod has taken on has been trying to reestablish relationships with all these different proteges. And he's met with quite a few of them.
Okay,
Some of them are in this building, as a matter of fact, and Rod's met with quite a few of them. So he's trying to rebuild that relationship with some of these companies that we've had and been very successful with.
Oh, yeah.
And it's just really a bandwidth thing for me, having the ability to, as many small companies that I had already talked to that want to be our proteges. It's just been a challenge for me to reconnecting with them. And it's been great that Rod's come on board, and he's the one that's really picked up that ball and ran with it.
Shout out to Rod.
Yep, no doubt.
So one of the last few questions, I know we've talked in general about a lot of the different Mentor-Protégé and the different aspects, et cetera. Well, where do you see Tec-Masters Mentor-Protégé efforts heading in the next few years, and maybe future proteges that we might be selecting?
So we have 3 current proteges. 2 of them just kicked off in June, and one that is going to end next August if we're not successful with a second extension. But we have 4 proteges, 4 potential proteges proposed right now, 3 with the Air Force and 1 with MDA. So those would be our next, that next set of proteges, right?
Yep.
And beyond that, we have a fairly extensive list of companies that want to be our proteges. And of those lists of companies that want to be our proteges, we have made a commitment with 3 of those companies and just looked them in the eye and said, we have committed to, we will propose a Mentor-Protégé agreement with you guys. So we have 3 already lined up that as soon as basically they're ready and, ready to move forward, that we will write proposals and we'll propose them. The DoD does not put a restriction on the number of proteges that a mentor can have. In theory, we could have as many as they could fund, right? But I truly believe that there's going to be a number out there. I don't know. I really don't know what that number is. I know we've had 4 in the past. I've heard as many as 6.
But it goes back to the staffing issue. You guys have 2 or 3 or 4 people running this. The more proteges we get, it requires quite a few other individuals joining your team.
Yeah, if we're successful getting all 4 of those next set of proteges on board, and then we propose 3 more, we'd have to hire somebody else to do this, because what we don't want to do is we don't want to have 6 or 7 proteges and me and Phil are the only 2 guys interacting with them, and we're not giving them the attention they need. Oh, yeah. The program won't be successful like that. So the bottom line is we'd have to bring on probably a 3rd manager to support additional proteges if we got that large. But I do believe that the company will continue on with its phenomenal Mentor-Protégé program. I think there will be interest for a long time with small businesses. And I think that some of our protégés are going to go on to do great things. And some of the technologies they're proposing is just, absolutely really interesting technology, So I think there's long-term growth for the Mentor-Protégé program here in the company. And I think it will just, continue getting better all the time as Phil and I learn more and more about it and how to support our protégés better.
Yeah, I think this is a good opportunity. I think we would maybe in the future on the podcast, we might have several of the protégés we're currently working with maybe come on and tell our viewers about all the great things that Tec-Masters is doing for them, but also talk about their technology, et cetera. Because as these companies grow, we grow with them. So the partnership and relationships are always there. Is there anything, we're about to close, but is there anything that's coming in the Mentor-Protégé program, like something new? I know there's been a lot of change this past year with the new administration coming on board and the government furlough, the government shutdown. Do you see anything from your 5 years of experience as being the director of the Mentor-Protégé program? Do you see any changes, or what does the future look like just from a programmatic side of things?
So two of the biggest changes I've seen since I've had this program is the fact that, one, it's a permanent program now. Okay. So it should be continuously funded, right? But a little over a year ago, they also implemented what's called the PPIs, the Protégé Pilot Initiative. And that PPI allows us to support a proposal with a protégé for them to potentially get additional funding that goes, in theory, directly to that protégé, so they can help them with additional things that we don't necessarily help them with, like buying stuff. Whether if it's a company that's trying to develop an AI tool, maybe they need to purchase servers or whatever the case may be, and they're a small company and they're expensive. So they could use the PPI to do that. We have 2 PPI proposals pending, and I only know of one company that's been successful getting a PPI on contract. And I think we were really close prior to the government shutdown, and I'm hoping that right after the beginning of the year that the 2 of our current protégés end up with PPI. But it's a big deal because it's up to 25% of the funded amount on one of these efforts that could go above and beyond directly to the protégé for very specific things. And there's 3 different areas that they allow the PPI money to be used for, and that is manufacturing customization, engineering, and software engineering. So the software piece of it is really where one of our protégés is asked for it, but the manufacturing is another for Avnic Defense, as a matter of fact. So those 2 things, when I look at those 2 things, the fact that it's a permanent program and they're adding something like the PPI to it, it leads me to believe that it's going to be long term. DoD intends to expand this somewhat. I don't think they'll expand it drastically, just based on funding constraints. But I think they'll continue this program for a long time and give other small companies the opportunity to participate in this program. Because, again, if you find the right mentor and it's a good fit culturally for a small company, it's a great deal for a small company.
That's awesome. Well, I just really want to say thank you for taking time. I know we're very, very busy during the holiday season, but really appreciate you coming on the podcast for episode 1. You've done a phenomenal job. Thank you for talking about the Mentor-Protégé program. We, as both Rich and I are both Tec-Masters employees, we want to get the word out about all the great things we're doing here at Tec-Masters. So really appreciate you taking the time to come talk to us today.
Well, honestly, when you and Peyton first talked to me about this, I felt honored that, it's like, okay, you guys want to do Mentor-Protégé first? It's like, I was glad to be here. I'm glad to sit down and have a conversation with you today. And I truly hope that, some small business out there gets to see this and they learn a little bit about it and become a little more interested in Mentor-Protégé and ultimately end up on a Mentor-Protégé agreement with some company.
Just getting awareness out there, talking about it. I think a lot of companies don't know a lot about it. Right. And I think a lot of employees at companies don't know anything about it.
Right.
But anyways, thanks for joining the Tec-Talk Podcast. To everyone listening, we're just getting started. This is our first episode, but there will be many more. And this podcast will bring conversations and insights from across all of Tec-Masters. You'll get to talk to everyone, and maybe soon one of our guests will be Dr. Marvin Carroll. He has said that he wants to join us, so we're super, super excited for Dr. Carroll to be hopefully joining us in the next 1 or 2 episodes. But with that, thanks for tuning in, and we'll see you in the next episode.